Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. So 5 months ago today, we introduced you to our royalty review panel. In a moment, you're going to hear from Dave Mowat and then our Premier, who will introduce Alberta's modernized royalty framework. This modernized framework comes as a result of extensive consultations with Albertans, including members of our energy industry, First Nations, labor groups, financial institutions, universities, students, and environmental organizations. I would like to extend my gratitude, first of all, to our panel, Dave Mowat, Annette Trimby, Leona Hansen, and Peter Terzakian. I would also like to welcome today on stage our Calgary MLAs, our Calgary caucus. When we launched this review in the summer, the task we asked the panel was both difficult and of monumental importance. The report they have provided to us is thoughtful and extensive. It focused on keeping Alberta competitive, creating good jobs, and making sure that Albertans receive full and fair value. Dave, Annette, Peter, Leona, the report you have produced is the result of the hard work and dedication Albertans are known for. And Dave, you once told me that you were concerned what your mother was going to think when this review was all done. In my opinion, she should be very proud. You should all be proud. I know that I am. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Mowat.
Thanks very much, Marg. And what the story Marg is talking about is my very spry 90-year-old mother. When she heard I had taken this on, she kind of leaned in and poked me in the chest and said, "Don't mess this up." And I think what she meant was, "Don't mess this up." But what we got every single day we were working on the review, and as it progressed, all four of us were constantly reminded just how much is riding on getting this right. So you're right, Marg, I will be talking to my mom, and I think we got it right. And another special thanks is to the media for, you were here from day one for us, and this is not an easy story to write. We know that firsthand. There's 200 pages of it, and you have to write it in much more compact words. And there's an awful lot of simple questions, and they tend to come with quite complex answers. So to your listeners, to your viewers and your readers, we couldn't have done it without your help. Thank you very much. And so we had a great panel, and really what made the panel special was there was only four of us, and we didn't have the answers. And what that forced us to do is listen. We didn't have preconceived ideas. We had to listen, and we had to learn. And I think more than 70,000 Albertans either spoke to us, wrote to us, or offered their opinions, whether it's the industry or nonprofit organizations. We really felt the support of people pitching in, putting their shoulder to us, and really as much as they could, giving us good and reasonable information. Two of the key elements in the mandate were to optimize returns for Albertans and returns for the industry. And success only comes when the two of them are successful. If one is winning and one is losing, that isn't the right situation. So what the goal of this has always been is to try and lift those two together. That's where more value for Albertans come from. And so everywhere we went, the question people asked us is, how do royalty rates stack up against other jurisdictions? We had a lot of information, some of the world-renowned firms giving us comparative information from around the world. And our conclusion is that Albertans are getting the appropriate share of value. We're about in the middle of the pack. Alberta has the most complex geological formations of anywhere in the world. Venezuela might be close, anywhere in the world. And so it's not unlikely you can find spots here that are a little better, spots here that are a little better. When you put it together, Alberta is competitive, and we have good companies operating for us. A lot of the discussion has always been around rates. People want to talk about what's the rate. And what we quickly learned is that's a conversation perhaps from the past, and what the conversation we need to have in the future is what's the value? What's the difference between the revenue we get in and the cost that it takes to get it there. Because you can have any, if your costs are $10, if your revenue is $10 and your costs are $10, you can charge any rate you want, and there's no value there. So what the win for Albertans and the win for our industry is to slowly but surely create more value in our resources. So we haven't really found a way to affect prices, so the variable in that equation is being able to lower our costs. And that's why the panel consistently focused on trying to optimize the returns for Albertans and the industry through lowering costs. And so what our recommendations do is build on the theme of building a modern, dynamic system that's capable of adjusting to the changes in technology and costs going forward. So we set out to optimize the returns for Albertans in the industry, and we think we can do that in a responsible and sustainable way. We also believe that as prices recover, this optimization will create more value in our resources, which means more jobs and more wealth for Albertans. We're very flattered that the government has chosen to adopt our panel's recommendations, and the biggest honor of all has been to talk to Albertans. And when I am done here, I am going to give my mom a call and say we didn't mess up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. I would like to now introduce our Premier, Rachel Notley.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out here today. Let me begin by thanking my friend and my colleague, Minister McQuaig-Boyd, for her hard work on this initiative, for her leadership, and for her guidance over the course of the last several months. And of course, I also want to thank Dave Mowat and his talented colleagues on the review panel for all of their work. I suspect that none of you were expecting quite how much work this was going to be, but I do believe that it's well worth it. And I also want to thank the many Albertans who took the time to participate in the panel's public consultations on this issue, and the many experts who provided Albertans with their best advice in the panel's technical working groups. The issues that you all have been dealing with are critical to our province. More than ever, they are on the minds of every worker, every family, every producer and investor here in the rest of Canada, and quite frankly, beyond. And so you have given us answers that can bring reassurance to our citizens and industry partners. Your work can give hope for a more competitive industry, greater future benefits, and a better sharing of those benefits over time. Alberta's energy resources are owned by the people of Alberta. They are the foundation of our prosperity, and they will remain a great opportunity for our province and our citizens. And they will play a central role in our economy and, quite frankly, in Canada's economy for many years to come. Our job is to steward these resources, to provide the right rewards to our partners and the right return for Albertans to hold in trust for future generations. The economic opportunity inherent in these resources must not be inefficiently wasted today or squandered for our future. So as you know, the panel was given 4 mandates. First, to look for ways to optimize returns to Albertans. Secondly, to look for ways to promote further investment in this important industry. Third, to suggest steps that we can take to diversify our energy economy and move up the value chain. And fourth, to propose an approach that helps develop our resources in an environmentally responsible manner. Through all of the panel's work, a number of things became clear. Our big challenges include more than just Saudi Arabia's desire to flood the market with cheap oil. Our biggest challenge, as many of you may have heard Peter Tazakian describe it, our existential challenge, is that our largest market is also becoming our largest competitor. And that competitor has a lower cost structure that delivers greater net revenues for their public and their industry to share. So our other challenges include that Alberta's royalty structure, as it exists today, is outdated and inefficient. It has not adapted to changes in technology. It creates unnecessary uncertainty and risk for investors. And it does not do enough to reward innovation and cost savings, or to encourage investment. So in light of these findings and based on the advice of the panel, our government has adopted these recommendations and will take the following steps. First, we will help ensure as good or better returns for the industry, investors, and Alberta's owners. We agree with the panel that at this moment in our history, with prices and markets being what they are, what Albertans need us to do is to help improve their industry's returns by removing distortions and disincentives in the system and, quite frankly, to work as partners with industry to grow the pie. Some existing wells were developed under today's, or since existing wells were developed under today's royalty system, that system will continue to apply to all existing wells for 10 years, and the modernized framework will apply to wells drilled after 2016. On new wells, we'll help incent better management of the costs that get deducted from everybody's returns. By focusing on these costs, Alberta owners can help their industry partners become stronger, more efficient, and more competitive, and net revenues will increase. Over time, new oil and gas wells should move more quickly from low initial royalties to higher posted royalties. That means higher returns for the public in the future. The new framework will be calibrated to ensure that industry makes the same rate of return on new wells as it would if those wells had been drilled under the current system. A current distortion that discriminates on the basis of the hydrocarbon found will be eliminated so that companies will not face the same risk of loss or inefficiency when they don't get the hydrocarbon they were drilling for. We will extend current drilling incentives that were scheduled to expire and build them into the new framework. Their effects will diminish in a high-price environment, and at that point it will mean a higher return for Albertans. The panel's advice is that the current royalty rates for oil sands are appropriate, and we will maintain those rates as a result and adopt a new framework for assessing deductible costs with greater transparency, accountability, and certainty. Albertans will be able to see all the costs oil sands operators are allowed to deduct when paying their royalties. We expect that oil sands will make a significantly greater financial contribution to Alberta's wealth over time as more operations reach post-payout status, which, under existing rules, subjects production to a higher royalty rate. So our second thing is we will significantly increase transparency and accountability of the system. Albertans deserve more than the promise of an optimal return. They actually deserve to have that promise verified in a way that they can see and touch and rely on. So we will therefore throw open the doors and we will let the sun shine in on the development of their resources and the government's regulation of it. We will provide an unprecedented level of transparency, not only about the costs of drilling through the publication of a new drilling cost index, but also, as I said earlier, about the prices, the production volumes, and the allowable costs used to determine royalty payments in oil sands operations. Detailed reports on all these costs will be disclosed and tracked on an accessible, easy-to-navigate website so that legislators and citizens can monitor this new system as it is implemented and managed. The Government of Alberta will also benchmark results to ensure the system is meeting Alberta's priorities. We will provide the legislature and the public with an annual detailed report comparing overall returns to Albertans with those achieved in comparable jurisdictions and measuring levels of job creation, investment, production costs, value-added development, and environmental performance so that Albertans can assess our progress on the principles that they told us to pursue. Now, there will always be room for debate in Alberta over whether we get an appropriate owner's return or if development is meeting our expectations. And that's a good thing. That shouldn't stop. But going forward, and for the first time, we will be able to debate these issues from the same verifiable facts. Third, we will act on opportunities to diversify our energy industry and to move up the value chain. Now, the panel's report details a long history of successive administrations from the Farmers' Government, Social Credit, and the Progressive Conservatives who used royalties and other public policy tools to work to add value to Alberta's resources and to develop Alberta's economy. Unfortunately, it does appear to be a bit more at this time of a history lesson, Most of the refining and the upgrading and the diversified energy activity we see in Alberta today dates from times a little while past. So the panel points to a number of new opportunities for Alberta to promote diversification and to create jobs. And we will make those new opportunities and jobs part of our future with focus and with a real Alberta-style determination. Our government will shortly announce new initiatives to this end. And we will also announce in more detail a working group on energy diversification that will pick up where the panel left off and give the Government of Alberta an ongoing advice on how to best partner with industry and communities to deliver more jobs from our resources. So what's the bottom line? We are talking here about important issues and about opportunities, about our obligations, and about our future. And Albertans deserve straightforward talk from their government, and they expect their government to deliver the same message no matter who they are talking to. That's why, for instance, when I talk about the critical issues that we know are on people's minds, like resources, like climate, like the future of our economy, I say the same thing to Alberta oil workers as I say to environmentalists in Toronto. I deliver Alberta's messages to my colleagues, the premiers of Quebec, New Brunswick, and most recently to the Premier of Ontario, and I will do so next week in Calgary to Prime Minister Trudeau. And if I get a chance, I'll do the same with any mayor near the Energy East Corridor who wants to hear about the exciting and necessary changes that we are bringing about here in Alberta. So we will reduce carbon emissions in our economy. And with industry, together, we will invest in taking the carbon out of the barrel. We will invest in energy efficiency and renewable and lower carbon electricity. And we will keep working on pipelines and market access for the sake of Albertans and, quite frankly, of all Canadians who benefit from a strong Alberta industry. We won't shout or threaten Canadians in our principal markets, but we will act as a climate leader among the world's major energy producers by cleaning up our act, by engaging constructively with other provinces and stakeholders, and by being a good partner with Canada's new federal government. So the bottom line, the straightforward message I have for every person who wants to know about the government's plan on royalties is this. Our new royalty framework recognizes the reality of our economy today. It responds to the pain and the uncertainty that workers and families are feeling across our province. It is designed to encourage more investment and more jobs than we would otherwise have. And what you need to know is this. Alberta oil and gas explorers and producers, whether they are your employers, your customers, or the people whose shares are in your RSP, they will know today that the oil and gas wells they drilled this year and in previous years will pay royalties to Albertans in the same way that they have since they were drilled. And the exact same system now, next January, and for the next 10 years. There'll be no changes on existing wells for 10 years. And when those Alberta explorers and producers are making their plans today for drilling in 2017 and beyond, they will know this. Those new wells, even under the panel's modernized framework, will give them the same internal rate of return they would have earned on the same well drilled in 2016, subject to them meeting or beating average industry costs of drilling and prices remaining within the range that our extended drilling incentives remain in play. And so when oil sands operators and proponents of new projects are making their investment plans, they will have the certainty that they can operate, expand, or build under the same royalty regime that they have today. So what's next? We Albertans have been through a lot. Unfortunately, there is likely to be some more rough weather ahead. But I believe in Albertans. I believe in our determination to come through this together, in our ability to build on our strong foundation and to create an even better future for us all. We will agree often, and we will disagree occasionally, but we will innovate and control our costs. We will maintain investment, maintain and create good-paying jobs, including new jobs adding value to our resources and developing new innovations. We will gain greater revenues for the Heritage Trust Fund over time. We will be world climate leaders among energy producers, and we will persuade Canadians with evidence and with reason of the importance of our resources and of us gaining access to more markets. One of the important things that we've demonstrated with our review panel is that it is possible to discuss these issues without undue drama or division. We can look at the public policy, the business, and the environmental issues together, and we can make practical progress that makes practical sense, which is what we've done today. So I congratulate and I thank the panel. I look forward to the work ahead with all Albertans, and thank you very much for being here. There you go.
Thank you, Premier. Now I will turn things over to Cheryl Oates, and she'll speak to the media questions.
So we're going to begin with questions from this room, and I'm going to ask that you ask your questions into a microphone that my colleague Matt will bring around. So if you're waiting to ask a question, throw your hand up or give him a wave, and we'll try to get through questions in this room. Then we'll move on to Edmonton, and then we'll take other callers from outside Edmonton and Calgary. We're going to try and contain this question period to 15 minutes. And I would ask that for this portion that you reserve your questions for the Premier, and if you have follow-up questions for other panel members or the Minister, we're happy to accommodate those afterwards.
Hi, Premier. I have a question and a follow-up.
Everybody has a follow-up.
Yes. What would you say, first off? I think maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, there would be high expectations for a royalty review under an NDP government, an NDP that has consistently raised the specter of Albertans not getting their fair share. What would you say to people who think that this did not deliver an additional take for Albertans?
Very good question, and of course that's the big question. And the issue is this: there are, well, I would suggest three critical things that are relatively new and that drive our decision making in this respect. First of all, quite frankly, we know that Albertans across the province are very concerned about the stability of the economy and the certainty of their jobs. And we know that the health of the energy industry has an impact on the majority of the economic activity in this province. And so we need to be sensitive to that. Related to that, of course, is the fact that the price of oil has dropped dramatically, and that means that the industry, which is itself in a precarious and somewhat struggling situation, and so they need to be able to work collaboratively with government and have a government that's going to partner with them to ensure that things don't get out of hand. And thirdly, as I know the panel has already outlined, the position of our industry within the global market has changed dramatically in just the last 3 or 4 years. As people have said, our biggest customer is now our biggest competitor. And so what we ultimately decided we needed to do was that we needed to work with industry in order to devise a rational, modernized, accountable system that helps reposition industry so that we can reassert our competitive advantage on the world stage. And this plan does that. And so, quite frankly, the times have changed, and we need to work in the best interests of the current economic challenges that we're faced with. And so I think this plan does that.
I just wanted to ask you, given the uncertainty this caused within the industry and the relatively small changes announced today compared to perhaps expectations, was it worth doing?
I absolutely believe so, because, even though sort of the net income outcomes right now are not significantly different, what we are doing is we're restructuring the way we engage with industry as it relates to royalties in order to incent technological innovation and greater efficiencies. And that's something that I think government can work in partnership with industry effectively on, because we do need to reposition ourselves in the global market. And so that's what this does. So it is actually very different. It removes incentives that were actually encouraging bad behavior, that were encouraging inefficiency, that were encouraging a a lack of focus on innovation and technological improvements. And so it helps to work with industry to position it to take on a greater share of the global market and ultimately to increase the net revenues coming both to investors as well as to Albertans. So I do actually think that it does make changes that are not insignificant. As well, we'll be moving forward to do more work on the value-added piece, which I think there's great opportunity for us to make progress on. And I ultimately think that all of this is going to work very well in concert with our climate change plan, so that all of it comes together in a way that allows us to encourage industry to, as I've said before, reposition itself and reassert its leadership position on the global market as a progressive, environmentally and sustainable provider on the world market.
Hello, Premier. The NDP ran on a platform that basically had described the past system as being one of the world's lowest oil royalty rate structures. Considering that the panel came up with findings basically saying that the system was average, do you have any respect for the system that was in place before?
Well, I think that, there were pieces of the old system that were in place that we had some major concerns with, and particularly given the state of industry when those rules came into place. But really, we're not going to be able to go retroactively and undo that. We have to go forward, and we happen to be going forward at a very, very dynamic time where the ground is shifting dramatically just in the last 24 or 36 months, and so that's what our focus is going forward. So, I don't necessarily believe that we always made the best decisions to ensure that Albertans got the greatest resources when oil was at $110 a barrel, quite frankly. But that's not what we're dealing with now. What we have to deal with now are the economic challenges that are in front of us right now, that are in front of Alberta families right now, that are in front of Alberta workers and Alberta company owners. And that's what we're focused on doing in a way that allows us to bring everybody together to work through some of the rough waters that we're in, quite frankly, right now.
Premier, a lot of this document distributed is almost a primer on how royalties work, and I'm wondering if your sense now is that a lot of, and given that you're making so much of it public, how it will be, payments will be in the future, was your sense that Albertans maybe didn't understand the regime in the past, and maybe people within your own party and your base will now look at this and see, oh, this is how it works, this is why we'll get what we get? Because a lot of this seems to be almost like a textbook explaining this is how royalties work and this is possible why they're not really changing much in the future.
Well, I think there's no question that what we do need to focus on is enhancing transparency for Albertans to see how the situation, how royalties work, how the industry works, what attracts investment, and who we're competing with when we're trying to attract that investment. And the report does a good job of even describing how that process of competing for limited investment dollars has changed just even in the last few years. And so I think that the clearer we can be, the better. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very pleased that one of the other things coming out of this report, going back to your questions over there, is this commitment to be much, much more transparent and to be reporting regularly in a way that Albertans continually can go back, check their elbow. Is this working for us the way it should be right now? And because I think that's something, this is so fundamentally important to all Albertans that we need to be able to engage in that where we have a good understanding of what the facts are for us.
Quick follow-up, was there consideration to most of the incentives in here are more based on efficiency in the future versus anything tied to green technology? Was that a consideration, or was the sense that that's a different aspect right now, focusing on the
well, I think that they're going to link together, and there's going to the climate change plan has a number of mechanisms that will likely link in quite seamlessly with the program that we have here to ensure that we are also, of course, able to incent as much green technology as we can. And so typically, if you do it the right way, you're incented to very quickly develop technology to ensure that your production process is as efficient as possible. And if you're doing it also within a regime like the one that we've established through our climate change leadership plan, then there's no question that the investment choices are also going to be made on the basis of how green they are. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be encouraging, and that's exactly the kind of thing that's going to position our industry to be a leader in the world.
Here's a question with no supplemental for the first time in my career.
Who are you? Who is that? Who is that? That's
Well, and when you hear the question, you'll really say, who's that? This might be a question asked by people within your own party. Just 8 months ago, not 4 years ago, not when Stelmach was around, 8 months ago when oil was, what, $55, $60, somewhere around there, you said the PCs refused to implement the oil royalties the people of Alberta deserved. Your platform said the PCs were much too close to a small minority of Albertans who were benefiting from the status quo. And you said the people of Alberta as a whole are deprived of much of the benefit of our own resources. So in those short months, yes, the oil price has gone down, but how do you explain that this was just 8 months ago, this particular statement, and now you're accepting this particular statement?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I've outlined already, I mean, there's a number of different issues. I mean, we've seen dramatic change over the last 8 or 9 months. We've seen not only the price of oil drop, but also projections about how long the price of oil will stay low change dramatically in literally within the last 8 or 9 months. I will certainly take responsibility for the fact that the impact of what was going on in the U.S. Wasn't as clear to me 8 months ago as it became as a result of going through this process. So seeing that we're dealing with lower prices and that, in fact, our historic market and the attractiveness of our product to that historic market has also been changing quite dramatically in the course of the last, as I say, 24 to 36 months. So those are absolutely, as I said before, legitimate questions. But I think that we're at a point right now where we understand the implications of the energy industry's difficulties to our economy, to our communities, to people's feelings of stability. And now is the time to work together as partners to still bring about change, to bring about innovation, to grow the net pie, to work on value-added jobs, and to enhance transparency. But it is not the time to reach out and make a big money grab. That just is not going to help Albertans overall right now. And so I feel quite confident that this is the right direction for us to take.
We have a couple more questions from this room, and then we're going to go to Edmonton.
Premier, Peter talks about an existential crisis facing the industry. Will this framework, how far will it go to averting it?
Well, I think that certainly it's geared in large degree to address that, in that it very intentionally incents efficiency and the reduction of cost to production, which would, of course, then allow us a greater ability to compete. And the other thing that's kind of exciting about this is that, in Alberta, unlike even in many U.S. jurisdictions, we also have incredible intellectual capital and also, institutions that engage in innovation and development. And so my hope is that as we really put the focus on innovation, on technological development through these incentives inherent in this framework, that we'll actually be able to export something else, which is that technology, and that expertise. But that being said, one piece that will help. The other piece, of course, that's fundamental, which you've heard me talk about a lot, is our need to get our product to a different market. Pipeline East, Pipeline West, we need to be able to diversify our market away from the U.S. And that, of course, is something else that, as you know, I've been working a lot on, and that I believe that our overall modernization, whether through this framework or through our climate change plan, will help us achieve.
as a follow-up, how would you rank royalties in importance to the industry's survival against market access or overall market prices?
Well, I think, I mean, everyone knows that at this point, market access and overall price of oil are the fundamentally most important things. You know, I mean, I guess royalties become increasingly important depending on the degree to which you change them. But what we're talking about is working collaboratively to incent better behavior in a way that allows for there to be a sort of stable environment within which investors and producers can make decisions both now and going forward.
Hi, Premier. Your speech, you mentioned that you expect greater revenues for the Heritage Fund over time. How much should we expect will be going into the Heritage Fund over time as a result of these changes?
Well, that requires a level of modeling that, quite frankly, we haven't been able to nail down, and quite, you know, we sort of looked at, you know, should we be modeling and coming out with these numbers and how accurate are they? I mean, the idea here is that through these incentives, we increase costs, we grow net revenue, and the portion then of the net revenue that comes to Albertan also grows. And then once we get an assessment of how that's working, then obviously you want to take those incremental increases and put them into the Heritage Trust Fund, which is something that we've always talked about. You know, even when we were talking before about much greater royalty increases, we always talked about ensuring that those incremental increases went into the Heritage Trust Fund. So as we go through this process and get a sense of incremental increases, which quite frankly, you know, we don't, the model is such that you wouldn't begin to see them for at least 2 years. But if, as that happens, the idea is that they would go into the Heritage Trust Fund at that time. But the modeling, there's still some work to be done.
Okay, and just as a follow-up on something different, you've talked previously about refining and upgrading more oil in Alberta that's produced in Alberta. Do you think, after looking at this report, is that attainable? And what incentives or initiatives do you have to introduce to promote energy diversification?
Well, that's a really good point, and we will be talking more about that in the days and weeks to come. I mean, as the report rightly identifies, you know, upgrading or value added, particularly from on the natural gas side of things, there's a lot of opportunities that already exist, that are already in play, that can be built upon, and so it's just a question of what kind of incentives we can offer, and we'll be looking at what's necessary in order to ensure that we strike the right balance between incentive and competitiveness and a good deal for Albertans. And that's one of the things that we'll be asking the working group, which we'll be talking more about in the weeks to come, to continue to work on. And what's the best balance in terms of incenting additional value added, and what other ideas can we come up with in terms of building on our value added opportunities. So that is not a small piece, and you know, there's been a lot of talk across the industry and across, frankly, the economy, leaders throughout the economy saying, we want to see what this royalty framework looks like as soon as possible. And so we're coming out here with the framework now. There is more work to be done, quite honestly, on the value-added piece. We're not finished on that piece. But we thought, you know what, we better get out here on this thing because this matters and this is impacting security and certainty. So we're going to come out on this and we're going to do more work on the value added.
You said, I wouldn't ask this question if you had not said, and it's not the time to reach out and make a money grab, which opens up the logical follow-up, to my mind anyway. When would it? Would you, if oil goes to $100 or $110 a barrel in 2 years, change this regime to capture that, or is this the regime that you're going to bring in that will be there for years to come?
Well, I think, you know, the overarching framework is sound, and so that's what our plan is right now. But there's no question we've talked about ensuring that we continue to report to Albertans about our overarching competitiveness. So when you look at you know, what the royalty regime would look like in an entirely different situation, it all comes down to how do we compare to the relevant competitors. So the price of oil is one thing that impacts, but not necessarily the only thing, because it also depends on who you're competing with in what market and what their cost structure is. So we'll continue to look at that along the way, but I'm quite confident that at this time this is the right framework and this is something that people can count on. And we are going to continue to move forward with a level of transparency, not only with Albertans but with industry, that they've come to expect through this process. And I think that people will find that it's pretty easy for them to count on. But right now, what we're focused on is growing our net revenue, because we're not in a position right now to be able to take a bigger piece and remain competitive. And really, a lot of that's going to come down to what it looks like in other jurisdictions.
We're going to go to Edmonton now, where we have 2 questions waiting, and then we'll come back to this room for the 2 questions that we haven't got to yet. Operator, can you put through the call?
Edmonton line is open.
Yeah, Premier, this is Rick Dolphin from Insight. I was wondering, does the benign aspect of this review, especially as it affects the oil sands, who really aren't going to be affected for a while, have anything to do with the negotiations you had with some of those oil sands companies to get them on side with your climate change program, which is a quid pro quo?
No. No, the answer there would be no. I mean, this panel, I mean, yes, there was certainly consultation between the 2 panels around how their recommendations would work together and sync together to, you know, some general overall conversations. But in terms of the work that the panel did, this panel, they simply looked at the questions that they were asked to answer. They looked at the evidence, they did the research, they listened to people, and they came up with their plan. There was no quid pro quo or anything like that. It, however, is, I think, important to understand that we've asked industry to roll up their sleeves and make a pretty important contribution on the climate change leadership efforts that our province is embarking on. And so it's important to understand the overarching context of this work. You know, if people think, oh, nothing's changing for industry, well, we are actually asking a lot from them right now, as are external circumstances compelling from them. And so we're trying to make it all, use this time of change as an opportunity to make good change.
One other question. You're going to be meeting with the Prime Minister next Wednesday, I believe. Will you be talking to him about pipelines? And if so, what will you be saying to him?
Yes, I will absolutely be talking to him about pipelines. You can rest assured, and I'll be saying a lot of the same things that you've heard me say publicly, again, as I've said here in Toronto last week, and every place in between. And we will certainly be having excessive conversations, and we'll be talking about the need for them to move forward on pipeline approval in an expeditious and credible manner so that we can finally get progress on an issue that has been stalled for too long, that quite frankly hurts not just Alberta's economy, but Canada's economy.
Okay, Graham Thompson is next. Wanted to follow up if you wish, Graham.
Yeah, Premier, I'm sorry, just to go over some of the been raised before, and I apologize for doing it again. But going back over your comments in the last year, and going back to 2007 with previous reports saying we were not receiving our fair share. We heard from the NDP over the years we were not receiving our fair share. Is it a matter politically that were you wrong in the last few years? Were we not receiving our fair share, or were we receiving our fair share before? Now we are receiving.
Really, I think the more important piece is not whether, you know, we were wrong 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 2 years ago, whichever. The fact of the matter is that the environment has changed profoundly, even in the last 12 months. And so that is what is driving our decision making at this point. You know, we, as I say, we have tremendous uncertainty in the industry. We have an unprecedented low level of oil prices with some concerns about how quickly that will recover, which is different than anything we faced, frankly, for the last 25 years. And we also have a situation where, you know, the people that we normally would be selling to want to sell to us. And so that is different. And it's important to take a look at the situation that you're dealing with and respond accordingly.
Just a follow-up. Is this it now for reviews? There'll be no more reviews of royalties, rates, as long as you're Premier?
I think that it's important for us to, as I say, always keep an eye on whether we are meeting the objectives that we laid out. And that's part of what we will be doing through ensuring that we continue this transparent reporting or introduce this transparent reporting and then continue to, as I say, have Albertans check their elbow on this as we go forward and as we see how the industry progresses over the years to come. I would never say this is not it. Quite frankly, up until 2007, if you look at the history of royalty reviews from 71 to 2007, they used to happen quite frequently. And I think that we, as the stewards of this public resource, need to ensure that we do our due diligence on it. And so we will continue to do our due diligence, but we will also continue to do it in a transparent and open way that where industry can see what our values are, the kinds of things that we consider, and what they can expect. And so that's my answer.
We're going to come back to the floor now for the 2 outstanding questions, and then we'll conclude. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's Deborah Yedlin. You've staked a lot on innovation to increase productivity, decrease costs, and decrease emissions. And the onus seems to be on industry squarely to do that, both in the climate context and in the context of the royalty panel. Given the challenges in the industry right now, are you confident that kind of innovation commitment will be forthcoming, A, and B, is there a role for government to play to ensure that this gets to the threshold that you're looking for?
Well, I think certainly with the climate change plan, part of the conversation we've had is that some of the resources that accrue to the climate change plan will be dedicated to working in partnership with industry to promote innovation. So that piece is already there. We already have quite a big innovation throw within government, and we've done additional work on that through our economic diversification plan that we introduced in our budget last fall. So that certainly will be something that industry can access. And then, as I say, with respect to this plan, what will happen is that if industry is able to innovate such that their costs are below average, there is a built-in incentive. They benefit from it, and so and that's how this works. So if they can bring it in below average, below average in terms of costs, above average in terms of performance, then there's a built-in incentive. So that's already sort of built into the system. So there'll be a number of different forums, and as I say, there's been a great deal of very open and transparent conversation with industry around this process already, and I imagine that will continue.
We'll take our final question now, and then we'll conclude.
Premier Scott Dipple from CBC. What is your expectation in terms of the industry reaction, and what, if anything, do you intend to do, or your energy minister, in terms of selling it, or do you even think you have to sell it?
Well, certainly I think as part of my overarching, my obligation and priority as the Premier, of course, is to talk not only in Alberta but across the country about our energy industry and what we need our colleagues across the country to work with us on with respect to ensuring that we grow and support its health. So obviously in that context, I'll be talking about not only the royalty review but also the climate change plan. Our minister, of course, will be talking about this plan and talking to people pretty directly, quite in a very busy way over the next few weeks, and so we'll be talking to them about that. You know, I mean, in terms of what we expect to hear from people, we hope that they'll see that we've taken a fairly reasonable approach that reflects the concerns not only of industry leaders but of the Albertans who are worried about their economic security, about people who are worried about their jobs or where they'll find their next job, about the communities that are worrying about the impact of the downturn on those communities, and so I hope that people will find that we've struck the right balance, and certainly we are going to move forward on this plan. This is not something where this is something we've talked about and then we're going to negotiate it for 6 months. This is the plan, so that's the way we're going to move forward.
Thanks, everyone. That's it for today.
Thank you.